I'm happy to introduce Chris Harrington, who's the director of the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute. He's a former teacher, a former administrator, and he now leads a team of researchers who study the most effective practices for online and blended learning, which is, of course, something that all of our kids have gone through over the course of the last year and a half with COVID. Chris, nice to have you on with us.
Thank you for having me.
So did we learn something? I hope we learned something about online learning during the pandemic, and how can we improve it to make it a better experience for everybody?
Yeah, we learned a lot. I think one of the major things that we've learned here is that for online learning to be truly effective, there is time and effort that needs to be put into it in properly designing learning environments and all the support structures for virtual learners. And we had a lot of struggles in schools and districts where virtual learning was not a common practice. So when school closures hit us in March of 2020, a lot of teachers and a lot of students and families alike were pushed into an environment that they were unprepared for. And that created a lot of stress and a lot of struggle for those involved.
Yeah, it did. What did you learn about alleviating that stress and struggle?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned very intently is that we really need to pay attention to what the unique needs are of every single child. And that's not new to education, really, but it was certainly something that was underscored during the pandemic. And one of the key areas that we really need to spend some time in helping schools better prepare for virtual learning is in professional development for teachers. And that's giving them the skills and the materials and resources, which includes digital content and devices for students, but then also the skills in how to teach in this very different environment. A virtual environment is very different from a face-to-face environment.
Absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the head. We just assumed that turning computers on was going to allow kids to basically be in school just by being at home. But the whole method of learning, I'll give you one example. I always, when I had a teacher who used to walk up and down the aisles, in the classroom, and would raise her voice when she thought people weren't paying attention, or might spin around and just point at you and say, answer the question. I learned quite differently than when I had a teacher who just sat at the desk in the front and mumbled. The whole approach is different. And so I have to think that, with online, where you can't physically see somebody, where they don't get close to you, where the volume of their voice isn't a factor, that there's got to be a whole different way of holding kids' attention. Am I right?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. You can still engage with kids. You can develop relationships with kids. You can create interactivity. It's just how you structure that environment. It's just done differently. And, thought and effort needs to be put into learning how to do that properly. We were grossly unprepared for that, no doubt.
Yeah. Now, you did a big study on this. What was the key takeaway from what you learned?
Well, the key takeaways in this particular study were that the study was focused on student engagement and how do teachers of mature virtual learning programs engage with students. And so these were 17 statewide virtual schools across the country, over 1,700 teachers and nearly 100 administrators who supervise those teachers sharing thoughts and ideas here. And out of that study, there were some very specific strategies that teachers can be using if they want to engage students. And a lot of that focuses on how they develop their content, present their content in an online environment, and how they communicate and interact with students both synchronously, which is real time. It could be through Zoom meetings or even live chats, or asynchronously, and that's through discussion boards or feedback from assignments. And all that looks and feels differently. It's still a core function of the teaching process. But that's one of the takeaways. Probably the other greatest takeaway is that if you really want to engage students the relationships really, really matter. And to nurture relationships in a virtual environment, again, that's done differently too, but there are some core aspects of just communicating with students, regular and frequent communication, how you provide feedback on assignments, humanizing the experience for kids, letting the kids know that you as a teacher on the other end are a human and you're not just a computer that they're sitting behind.
Right.
But then providing those opportunities for those synchronous conversations.
All good stuff. We have a lot to learn on this, but it obviously isn't going anywhere. And it's going to be a wave of our future and a way our kids learn for many years to come. Chris Harrington is the director of the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute. It's good to have you on. Thanks, Chris.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.